Greetings and salutations, this is Huge Ass. Headphone warning in 3, 2, 1. Severe facepalm warning is in effect. Oven mitts mandatory from this point forward. You are at risk of pummeling yourself to death with facepalms. Yes, we'll definitely need those warnings for this one, guys, so I'm not kidding. Go get your oven mitts. People ask me why do I bother with these flat earth idiots, and it's a question I ask myself over and over as well. And the answer is always, it's really not anything to do with them in particular. It's about the people that they might fool. People who, through lack of experience or lack of education, don't know any better, and then they hear someone so adamant that they're correct that they think there must be something in it, even though there's zero evidence. My job, and the job of people like me, is to point out that there is zero evidence for a flat earth, and there's overwhelming evidence for a spherical earth. Most of it you can collect yourself. Today I'm going to have a look at two Flerfs and another guy who's effectively on the fence, but who represents the sort of people that I'm trying to reach, at least on the surface. But before that, I just want to list the traits that you should look for in these videos. I think these traits typify flat earthers and other conspiracy nutters. They are total arrogance about their point of view, arrogance being defined as confidence without basis. The second one is intellectual dishonesty. Even when the truth is put right in front of them, they'll deny it. And the third is emotional reasoning. They don't base their reasoning on anything real, just on how they feel about things. This usually manifests itself in arguments from incredulity. Think level Earth observer who just can't believe anything he sees.
I don't entirely know exactly what's going on.
That's alright, Adam. We can't believe that you can't believe it. Let's look at the first piece of silliness.
Come on now. That's a balloon, guys. Real rockets go up like 1,000 miles an hour, dude. Look at that. Are you joking? Are you guys honestly thinking that goes to space? Dude, look how boring that is.
Wow.
Wow. Watch it start to turn off into the horizon because they're parabolic. They don't go straight up. They don't go into space. You're all being lied to and your money's being stolen, and they're telling you to wear a face mask for something that can't protect you from something that doesn't exist. There you go, bro. Off in the ocean. Look, it's tilting. It's tilting.
It's about to go to where we're spinning 66,000 miles per hour around the sun in a near perfect vacuum.
It's barely going to leave the freaking... It's like... Wow.
Everyone else in the world, 95% of the world's helium supply is bought by NASA.
And you really have to ruin this for...
What do you mean ruin it?
Ruin it.
It's not real. Space isn't real.
Unfortunately, a perfect example of what I'm talking about. Arrogance without basis. Space isn't real. And it's a balloon, he says. He's literally watching a rocket take off before his very eyes, and he says it isn't real. That's also an example of intellectual dishonesty. And when he can tell that no one's listening to him, he breaks off into the emotional arguments. It's all a conspiracy. They're forcing you to wear a face mask. What's that got to do with a rocket launch? These two idiots just take the cake. You want to see more of it? Watch him on MC Toon. He and Irish Demon really took him apart. And Thompson himself gave many more examples of what I'm talking about here. Let's move on to the next victim. Reality denier. Nick from Phuket Word. First of all, let me say that I'm very glad that Nick managed to get home from the UK to Thailand so he could be with his family. But unfortunately, he didn't spend any of that time trying to learn how to think. He seems to be spewing out even more nonsense. And in his infuriatingly waffling style, he takes forever to make a nonsensical point. So bear with me on this one and get out some extra oven mitts. You'll need them, unfortunately.
I'm just going to go through a brief section of this conversation between SciManDan and Chris Lintott, who apparently is a bit of an expert on stars and all that stuff.
That sounds rather disrespectful, Nick. Chris Lintott is an astrophysicist. He's a professor of astrophysics in the Department of Physics at the University of Oxford. He's about as credentialed as you can possibly be in this field. Saying he's an expert in stars and stuff is a bit like saying a doctor is an expert in the human body and stuff, or an electrician is an expert in sparky things. It's never been established what you're an expert in, Nick, other than spewing out nonsense. For that, you've published a large body of work.
Now, SciManDan is well known to so-called flat earthers because he often does hit piece videos.
And there it is. Intellectual dishonesty and an argument from emotion. Doing videos showing why you're wrong are not hit pieces. They are opportunities for people like you to learn. A hit piece would attack you personally, not the things you say. A discussion of the ideas is just that. A discussion of the ideas. I guess pointing out that someone makes the same mistakes over and over and over could be seen as a bit personal, but there's an easy way to fix that. Stop making those mistakes. Learn from what you're being told. By all means, test what you're being told, but don't hand-wave dismiss it just because you don't like it. And if you've got a counter-argument, present that argument. After all, that's what a debate is.
But one very interesting aspect of this particular piece of the conversation is quite revealing, because we see what SciManDan doesn't understand about, or is ignoring about the people he makes fun of, namely flat earthers.
Jeez, Nick. It's as if you had never watched SciManDan. Anyone who has, and he's got over 400,000 subscribers, would be hard-pressed to say that Dan makes fun of you guys. All he seems to do is present what you guys have said and allow the silliness of that to be self-evident. Just as I'm doing here with your video. And you've got to admit, with people like Multi-Tom-Tom and Level Earth Observer and Nathan Thompson, there's some really silly people on your side of the argument. Not so much on the reality side of the argument.
And it also illustrates how SciManDan doesn't understand the model that he believes in and promotes, the heliocentric model in which we are on the outside of a spinning globe.
You're making a couple of assumptions there, Nick. The first assumption is that you understand the heliocentric model of the universe. Unless you understand it, how can you judge whether or not SciManDan understands it? And there's not a lot in your videos that suggests that you do understand it. Next assumption that's wrong is that SciManDan believes in the model. No one believes in any model in science. It's not a matter of faith. It's based on the accumulated and verified body of knowledge that science has built up over centuries. And the last assumption demonstrates that you do not understand the model. No one says we live on a spinning globe except flat earthers. Our globe rotates, different from spinning. If you don't understand the difference, it shows that you're just making an argument from ignorance and an argument from emotion because it suits you.
So it's a great example of the kind of compartmentalized explanations that people like SciManDan like to come up with as so-called proofs for their belief.
Actually, it's a great example about how people like you compartmentalize your thinking to keep reality out of it, as we'll see later on. All you're doing here is projecting.
I just want to go a little bit further into what I said just now about the ignorance or the misunderstanding that someone like SciManDan has when it comes to his so-called debunking of so-called flat earthers.
Psychological projection is a theory in psychology in which humans defend themselves against their own unconscious impulses or qualities, both positive and negative, by denying their existence in themselves while attributing them to others.
So let's have a listen, and I'll stop it at various points where something needs to be pointed out.
Conspiracy Cats is the guy who normally who's co-host with me. We are both people that try and debunk conspiracies on YouTube using science.
Okay, he said we are both people who try to debunk conspiracies on YouTube using science. Now he's talking about another guy who has a very similar format, Conspiracy Cats. Now, first of all, let's talk about what the meaning of conspiracy is. There is no denying that people conspire.
I totally agree, Nick. And I'm sure Dan and Chris would as well as Conspiracy Cats and pretty much everyone else on the debunking community. The issue for us is when you see conspiracies that aren't there and for which there is zero evidence. Your incredulity is not evidence.
It could be people in a boardroom having a meeting to decide what kind of marketing plan they're going to use to sell a product.
That's not a conspiracy. That's just making a decision.
Or it could be politicians collaborating to create laws, or maybe have laws enforced in order to generate more income for the Treasury.
That's not a conspiracy either. That's just politicians as governors doing their job.
Parents even will conspire against their children, and children or siblings will conspire against their parents.
Well, that's a little bit closer to the true meaning of conspiracy, but it's hardly anything like keeping the shape of the Earth secret. You seem confused as to what a conspiracy actually is. Let's, in true Flerfs style, have a look at the dictionary. Conspiracy, noun. 1. The act of conspiring. 2. An evil, unlawful, treacherous or surreptitious plan formulated in secret by 2 or more persons. Plot. 3. A combination of persons for a secret, unlawful or evil purpose. He joined the conspiracy to overthrow the government. 4. In law, an agreement by 2 or more persons to commit a crime, fraud or other wrongful act. 5. Any concurrence in action, combination in bringing about a given result. I certainly don't believe the examples that you gave fit definitions 2, 3 and 4. There was no evil, unlawful, treacherous or surreptitious plan involved in any of those. You might get away with definition number 5, but given your context is a conspiracy to hide the shape of the Earth, I suspect we should go with 2, 3 and 4 in this case. So your examples don't support your case at all. You've offered a false equivalency. This falls under intellectual dishonesty. You know what you said doesn't really support your case, but you said it anyway, in the hope that it'll persuade someone. I think that counts as a little bit more projection.
So conspiracies happen all the time, everywhere, in every single aspect of our lives.
Not based on the examples that you provided, they don't.
So to then say that you debunk them with science is also another fallacy, because SciManDan and Conspiracy Cats have done nothing more than sit behind microphones, often reading scripts, and they're often making hit piece videos about so-called flat earthers or the people that are questioning the heliocentric belief.
Marie-Louise von Franz extended her view of projection, stating that wherever known reality stops, where we touch the unknown, there we project an archetypal image.
And their so-called debunking is nothing more than repeating the same old explanations that we all know from childhood, because they've been repeatedly told to us to have us believe in certain things.
Well, we are taught things as children to accept without question. Basic things that are the core of our understanding as adults. Things like our times tables or how to spell. And apart from it being basic information, it's also not possible for children to understand and analyse these things properly. Their brain has not yet developed that to the point where it can. In fact, your brain doesn't fully mature until you're about 25. As any parent will tell you, teenage brains and adult brains operate differently. But as you move into tertiary education, you are still required to know facts, but in things like physics, you are actively encouraged to test it for yourself. In fact, it's a requirement. I suspect Nick hasn't been to tertiary education, so he doesn't know this yet. In fact, most Flerfs haven't, and that's why they seem to have this concept that universities teach things by rote, which is not the case. That's only done in secondary and primary schools, where it's more appropriate due to the lack of development of the children's brain at that point. What happens then, though, is the teaching of basic information that they can use when they're an adult and can analyse things properly. And that's the other advantage of going to tertiary education. You learn how to figure out things. You don't just figure it out by yourself. If you've got nothing to compare it to, how do you know you're right? That's what university teaches you. They don't teach you what to think, they teach you how to think. Something people who haven't achieved that level of education have missed out on. And if smart people with the same facts all come to the same conclusion, that's because they're correct.
So that is no different to any other religious text that is promoting some kind of belief. And again, a lot of the time it's often open to interpretation. So there's no real science. None of these guys have ever done a practical demonstration in all these years of their so-called debunking of conspiracies. None of them have actually done an experiment. None of them have actually gotten up from behind their microphones and done anything practical to prove a point. All they've done is cited the same old explanations that we've all heard since we were in school and told to believe that we live on the outside of a spinning globe.
More intellectual dishonesty. Phuket Word knows full well that the vast majority of experimentation you can see on YouTube is done by the debunkers. Most of us do it to show Flerfs why they're wrong. Although because Flerfs are intellectually dishonest, they never accept any of it. Nick's ignoring the work of Mr. Sensible with his mage balloon. Where's Wally, who's demonstrated many things that Flerf said were impossible? Critical Think and Wade's Underworld, who do lots of observations of ships over the horizon, and the relative weight and the change in a control weight at different latitudes. Not to mention Wolfie 6020, who's done all sorts of experiments while he's up in his plane. Red's Rhetoric, who measured the speed and height and size of the ISS. And not to mention myself, who did a worldwide collaboration to map the sunset and sunrise direction on a flat Earth at the equinox. And I'm doing it again this equinox. And in June, I'll be doing an observation from both South America and Western Australia, and also South Africa, to show that the stars seen at the same time from all three continents are the same, which would kill the flat Earth. That's only possible on a globe. Anyway, I think that's enough of Nick for now. His video is 35 minutes long, and he only showed a few minutes of SciManDan's video. It's a rich goldmine of derp from Nick, but I think I've made my point. I want to end this video on a more positive note. Last week, FDFE debated someone who identified themselves as a flat earther. But if you've only seen Nathan Thompson, Austin Whitsit and Nick from Phuket Word, you've been very puzzled by the way it went.
Guest today is a flat earther that I found on Facebook. His name is Gavin. Gavin, welcome to the show. How are you doing?
Good, yourself?
I'm doing pretty good on my lovely rotating globe. Right, so Gavin, why don't you just take a couple of minutes, introduce yourself, and let everyone know your position, why you think that the Earth is flat. Then we just get into a discussion about things.
Okay. So like yourself, I always believed in the globe, obviously. You know, I went to school and I was taught the same things you were taught, probably in elementary and junior high, high school, or whatever the equivalent is down there. And then I went on to university, and then I got a little bit older, and I don't know, I started questioning things. I started looking at stuff, and I'm like, fuck, you know, it doesn't seem like a spinning ball. Things don't move. The atmosphere stays quite, you know, neutral in here, other than storms. It just didn't hit for me. I'm not a religious person, so it's not like I based anything that I think off of flat Earth because of the Bible or scripture, because it's farthest from the truth for me. And do I definitively know the Earth is flat? There's no pictures and there's no evidence. And I don't have the means, obviously, or the money to try to do something like that. But I can do things that I can witness myself, experience myself, and I guess use my common sense to look around and realize that I don't feel that we're on a ball. And I guess that is my view of it.
Okay, interesting you said you went to university there. Honestly, I've never met a flat earther who even walked in the doors of a uni. Do you mind if I ask what you did at uni?
I was Bachelor of Arts, St. Mary's University in Halifax, Nova Scotia. Okay,
fair enough, Bachelor of Arts. So you've been in education, but you haven't really studied anything physics-wise, is that correct?
No, not at all. I'm not going to sit here and pretend that I know all kinds about science. I'm not. I guess I'm knowledgeable in things that I read and research, and other than that, no, I don't really follow too much about it.
So that's a bit different, isn't it? He obviously believes what he believes, but he doesn't seem particularly arrogant about it. And he openly admits that he doesn't know anything about physics, so he's not particularly intellectually dishonest. That's quite an honest statement to make. His reasons so far are emotional. He's saying that it doesn't feel like it's spinning and things like that. That's a purely emotional thing to say. But the surprising thing is he went to university. Sure, he did an arts degree, it wasn't science, but he went to university at all. Maybe he's learned how to think. Let's see how he reacts to Red's rhetoric explaining what he did to measure the speed and height of the ISS.
And I were to show you these observations, what would you say to him?
If I saw it, I'm a person that has to pick things apart, and I have to obviously see evidence and proof for myself. I don't know, maybe I might change my mind.
So if I showed you that video, you would have to dissect it, or would you have to actually do it yourself?
Well, here's the thing. If I'm taking you for face value and you're going to send me a piece of footage, or I'm going to watch a piece of footage, I'm going to take it at face value that it is what it is. And if you're telling me what you're telling me, and you can prove what you can prove, then I guess it's kind of hard for me to sit here and say, well, the space station isn't real, right?
Okay.
I'm not one of these flat earthers who's just going to sit here and keep telling you, well, no, you're wrong, just because I feel you're wrong because I don't believe in it. If you could show me proof, man, power to you, and it might change my mind.
How rare is it that we hear something like that from someone who claims to be a flat earther? It's all we ever ask of them. Anyway, this video's already too long, and I think I've made the point. And it's a nice positive note to end on. So to Nathan Thompson and Phuket Word, be like this guy, Gavin. He's genuinely seeking the truth, because genuine truth seekers don't reject the truth when they don't like it. They got to be convinced by evidence, and not how they feel about the evidence. The corgi's warming up, so if you like this video, click the like button. It really helps me out, as does leaving a comment. And if you'd like to see more of what I do, click the subscribe button and the bell notification so that you get notified of future videos that I put out. And if you really like what I do, please show your appreciation by buying me a cup of coffee through the ko-fi.com website. It's a one-off donation, which I very much appreciate. Many thanks to everyone who's done so far. There's a link in the description of this video for that, and there's also a link to my Discord server if you'd like to join there and have more interactions with me directly. Or if you'd like to more regularly contribute to this channel, you can become a channel member by clicking the join button below. For $3.99 Australian a month, that means you're a part of the huge ass movement. So there's nothing left to do but cue the corgi.
You're despicable.
I love Hugh Jarson, I cannot lie.